Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chloethedev Unfiltered. I'm going to preface this video by saying I am not a cryptographer. I am not like a professional consensus researcher, but I enjoy consensus research. And so, as I've been learning more about the near ecosystem and the near blockchain specifically, excuse me, sorry. I went to the Nightshade paper about a month ago, I think, and it was really cool. Because it was like, as in, usually I research more Ethereum topics. And so with ETH2, talking about sharding and researching the beacon chain a lot, phase one is always alluded to, and phase two, obviously, with shards actually being used in transactions, is always alluded to, but focusing on phase zero was what I've been focusing on mostly, I guess. I never really learned much about the whole sharding aspect of things, and so the Nightshade paper was the first time I actually read through like a sharding approach, and that was really cool to read through. Although I guess I read through Gasper as well, so that's not really 100% true, but it's a little bit different because it's not fully implemented yet. Lots of research still on the ETH2 side, but I'm just gonna pop in to start reading. So Alex, actually he spoke at the town hall a couple days ago, I think. So he wrote this paper, which is super cool. And what's really cool is I work with Mintbase. And so I work with someone named Thor, and they worked on the Gasper paper, combining Ghost and Casper and Ghost. And so, and I'm like, I get to kind of communicate with Alex on Telegram and stuff, like here and there in the chat and stuff. And like they worked on this, so it's like so much consensus research. People just on my phone at the touch of a button, I can talk to them. So, Doomslug versus PBFT, Tendermint, and Hot Stuff. I've actually not looked into Hot Stuff nearly at all. PBFT and Tendermint, I've like touched, like maybe just reading the abstract, kind of maybe. But I do want to go through both PBFT and Tendermint eventually on this channel live and go through it. Hot Stuff I will probably go through now because now it's in this paper and I always want to go through all the papers. So I do also have the Doomslug paper actually loaded up here. And I guess I'll probably zoom in and get that sorted. Oh, it's actually pretty good. No, I'm going to make my face a bit smaller so I don't cut off the screen later. Perfect. So I'll jump to that later. So in this blog post, we see how Doomslug, our new block production technique, compares to PBFT, Tendermint, and Hot Stuff. So Nightshade, I guess, is the sharding, and Doomslug is block production. We will also dig relatively deep into how PBFT, Tendermint, and Hot Stuff work. Cover view changes. I don't like how it goes to. Yeah, I think you can change that. I'm not going to try and do the change. Oh, gosh, no. Pipelining, responsiveness, and some other details. On the last day of the previous decade, we published a paper called Doomslug, which is the one I just over here, in which we proposed a new way of producing blocks that allows us to achieve some sense of practical finality after just one round of communication, with a Finality Gadget providing full Byzantine fault tolerant finality after the second round. So you have okay, I'm going to read that again because I want to make sure I understand why Doomslug is important before I get into it, because I'm going to have to read this 100 times to understand all this stuff. Actually, some sense of practical finality. These are important things. Practical finality is not going to be the same definition as finality. Yeah, so what we refer to as a good paper always explains what you're thinking right after, but I like trying to figure it out myself and figure out where we're going beforehand. So great. What we refer to as practical finality or Doomslug finality, so they're creating this definition of finality for this consensus mechanism, is that a block produced by Doomslug is irreversible unless at least one participant is slashed. So if someone is slashed, then it's reversible, which makes sense because something bad happened. Okay. Doomslug also has a nice property that it continues producing and finalizing blocks for as long as just over half, of the participants are online and honest. Not 2/3, as required by BFT consensus algorithms. Though the Finality Gadget, of course, stalls. Oh, so they have to be online, but only over half need to be honest. Very cool. Now that the Doomslug implementation is completed. Wait, open link in new tab. What? Because not all these links always work. Oh, this one does work. Cool, cool, cool. This is going to be really complicated for me to jump into. Rust. First of all, complicated like source code stuff is beyond me. And Rust is beyond me. But I'm trying to learn Rust. And so I am going to jump into the near core docs eventually. Gosh, my brain. Anyways, it is a good time to discuss how it works. And yeah, for me, because I'm not a coder, it's easier and more accessible for me to read the papers. I'm more of a researcher, and then dig into the code. And that kind of helps me understand, okay, this, like, I know what should be happening in terms of consensus. So when I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's where the just over half is, or that's where this stuff is. I'm not very good at math either, though. So I always have to like try to finagle the math in. Gosh, I am like a multidisciplinary researcher. Oh gosh, there's probably geese outside on the lawn. Oh yes, there is. And so my dog is biting my sweater to try and go out. I have to at least start this paper. This is just an intro, by the way, to the paper. The paper isn't. This is just me having fun reading the intro to the paper. The actual paper will start maybe not even today, but I want to start like all this stuff. So how it works, how it compares to other approaches. Specifically, we'll compare it to Tendermint and Hot Stuff. If you have questions while you read, feedback is encouraged. Ask your questions and join the discussion here. I think that's going to be Discord link. Oh. Interesting. Okay, this is cool. This is cool. This is cool. Okay, I'm going to go through that later. This is too cool. You can actually like leave comments while you read it. Oh my gosh. Anyways, how Doomslug works. In short, Doomslug works by having a set of participants take turns to produce and broadcast blocks. Once a block at height h is received by other participants, they send endorsements on such a block to the participant assigned to the next height h+1. Oh, my dog is being extra needy. Mika, no. You cannot have them. Okay. Come. I'll give you some. So maybe I can bribe her with treats. You know? It's hard to stay focused when your dog is. I got some peanut butter Nature Valley bars. So she likes those a lot. We both like those a lot. Okay, let's continue. They send endorsements on the block to the participant assigned to the next height. So each round, one participant is in charge of producing a block. The other participants vote and send the endorsement to the next person. If after some predetermined time, the participant assigned to h+1 has not produced the block, the participants who sent an endorsement to her send another message to the participant assigned to h+2, indicating they suggest skipping the block at h+1. So it's time-based. Okay, cool. Block B, okay, 0, is produced by producer 0 at time 0. And then at time 0 plus some predetermined delta. I think that's delta. All block producers send So I used to have my papers read to me by my screen reader on my Google like a tablet or whatever. And so it would read all the symbols to me too, which I really enjoyed. So all the mathematical symbols would always be like stuck in my head. And I really miss doing that. And I'm going to start reading papers on my tablet again a little more soon. But that's like my second read through I do that. My first read through I kind of just fumble through it live and just like go through it. And then if I go through them again, or when I go through them again, I pull up the tablet, use the screen reader, and make sure the information, like column name, delta, whatever. All block producers, it helps for the math a lot. The proofs, reading all that stuff. All block producers send endorsements to block producer on block 0 to producer 1, blah, blah. Okay, it's just saying what we just read in a diagram. Anyways. Once a participant has endorsements or skip messages from more than half, okay, of other participants, they can produce their block. So once P2 has enough endorsements or skip messages for more than half of other participants. I wonder if that means you need, like, all participants need you. That wouldn't even make sense. It must be out of all the messages, you need to receive more than half of them. But what if it was like, oh no, because it's time based. So it shouldn't matter. After a certain amount of time, the other participants, as long as they're online, should send the message saying, or they get slashed, right? So they have to send a message in time, I guess. And so as long as they send a message in time, you should always get 2/3 of enough messages. And so you should always get more than half the message. So yeah, it must be more than half the messages of 2/3 must be weighted towards it. I don't know. So now we're going to read it and see. With careful handling of message delays and exact slashing conditions, this rather simple technique can provide the property that we discussed above. If a block produced by Doomslug contains endorsements on a previous block from more than half of the block producers, the previous block is irreversible. That makes sense. Unless at least one of the block producers is slashed. That makes sense. So yes, they're not even saying out of all the weight, get more than half. They're saying get more than half. So even strong, it's a stronger guarantee. Okay, that makes sense. That makes more sense in my brain. Okay. Moreover, it is guaranteed that even if the network is slow and messages are delayed, a block that contains endorsements from more than half the block producers will be created at some point, so the algorithm never stalls. That's true. As long as everyone's online, I suppose, the network never stalls, because eventually you should receive messages from everyone, or else someone gets, I guess you get slashed anyways. As mentioned above, there is a Finality Gadget that operates together with Doomslug. Under normal circumstances, once a block at height h plus 1 is produced, and the block at height h has Doomslug finality, remember that's just like partial finality, or whatever they called it, the block at height h, so the previous block, h minus 1, will have full BFT finality. Okay, so that's how they're working it. So is the block previous has full BFT finality. Once what? So under normal circumstances, so if there's no slashing, then once h plus 1 is produced, you instantly get h to get Doomslug finality, and then h minus 1 instantly has BFT finality. Very cool. In other words, at least 1/3 of the total stake would need to be slashed to revert it. Okay. We will see how it compares to other consensus algorithms 2 sections below. Although now I'm like, dude, maybe I should work on that. That would be so much fun. Sorry. Like comparing Doomslug to Gasper. That'd be so much fun. Anyways, sorry, I need to I need to stop eating while I'm reading, but that's okay. Both Doomslug and the Finality Gadget guarantees around block irreversibility do not make any assumptions about how slow or reliable the network is. In other words, both Doomslug and the Finality Gadget have safety under asynchronous network assumption. Okay. However, the guarantee that they cannot stall, probably called liveliness, assumes a partially synchronous network. Okay, so you assume the network's like healthy in order to have liveness. It's a rather common assumption, and all the consensus algorithms discussed in this post make this assumption in their liveness proofs. Makes sense? Having both guaranteed safety and liveness under asynchronous networks is impossible. A limitation known as FLP impossibility. I like how this paper just has so many links to everything, because like I've never really read about this property specifically, but like obviously like this paper was what 1984. It's an old paper that everyone knows about. I'm like, I know I should read through these. This is like the problem with me not having a computer science degree. It's like I don't have read, but like I read the papers and I'm like, I understand the concept like from a very high level. But reading the paper, I would understand it so much more. So my second read through even this article, I would come in here and read all this stuff, and it's only 10 pages, I think, or something like that. Let's see. Oh, it's like 8 pages. It's not even that long. Anyways. A short primer on PBFT, Tendermint, and Hot Stuff. Before we dig into the comparison of Doomslug with Tendermint and Hot Stuff, let's do a quick review of how they work. In a good case, PBFT, Tendermint, and Hot Stuff all work in a very similar manner. Okay. Prevo, pre-commit, commit. Diagrams don't do it for me. I mean, they help after I've read something, but like, the consensus protocol happens over multiple views. Optimistically, in just one view. Okay. In each view, there's a particular leader who's assigned to carry out the consensus. The leader proposes a particular outcome. In the first view, the choice of outcome is arbitrary. The leader sends the proposed outcome to all the remaining participants, and if they send back their pre-vote on the outcome, the participants wait until there are pre-votes on the outcome from 2/3 of them, and then each participant sends a pre-commit on the outcome. Once there are pre-commit messages from 2/3 of participants, the consensus is reached. Okay, makes sense. The way the participants exchange messages differs between protocols. Okay, so in Tendermint, they use gossip. See, now I'm understanding. So, in Tendermint, they use gossip, and each participant accumulates the pre-vote and pre-commit messages locally. Okay. Well, on Hot Stuff, the leader accumulates the messages. Okay, yes. And sends them back. Okay. The entire process, now I'm going to have to read the Hot Stuff paper because I think I've never actually read the Hot Stuff paper. But for I can't remember. Darn it. The entire process can be made with just a link. That's why I like doing them live, so I can really remember by reading through them and talking and like having all this, having my like live notes as I read through the paper. The entire process can be made with just a linear amount of network overhead. Indeed, if the leader accumulates the pre-votes and pre-commits, then the initial broadcast of the proposed outcome, as well as other participants communicating back their pre-votes and pre-commits, is already linear. The only quadratic overhead, naively, is sending accumulated pre-votes and accumulated pre-commits. Yes, but this can be done with linear overhead as well, using cryptography, if the accumulated messages are compressed using BLS signatures. Woo woo! If for any reason a leader fails to carry out consensus, it moves to the next view. Okay, so to the next participant, in which the next leader will attempt again. The view change is where Hot Stuff and Tendermint differ significantly from PBFT. In PBFT, each participant has a timer that measures how much time has passed since the beginning of the view. And once the timer crosses a certain threshold, they send a view change message to the next leader. The next leader needs to accumulate the view change messages from 2/3 of the participants and send back a new view message to them. This entire procedure requires at least cubic network overhead, okay, and is also rather hard to implement correctly. Okay, now the difference in Tendermint and Hot Stuff. Tendermint and Hot Stuff handle the view changes differently. Instead, there are timeouts in each phase. So I guess the two phases are pre-vote and pre-commit. And whenever such a timeout is triggered, the participant sends a corresponding pre-vote or a pre-commit on nil and moves on to the next phase or view locally. Thus, the view change is not an orchestrated process and is rather implicit. You wait time, you do it locally. Importantly, the mechanism for the view change and for committing the block is essentially the same, which significantly simplifies the algorithm. Very interesting. There are two major differences between Tendermint and Hot Stuff. One is that Hot Stuff is pipelined, meaning that a pre-commit of one view is a pre-vote on the next one. Okay, requiring almost twice as few phases as a non-pipelined version. Hot Stuff is pipelined, so you don't need to make not as many messages. Phases. Well, yeah, not as many messages being sent, not as many phases to go through. Okay. There are proposals to make Tendermint pipelined, but the way it's implemented in Cosmos and presented in the paper are not pipelined. Is Hot Stuff used in Polkadot? Probably. Second, and more frequently discussed, the difference is the fact that Hot Stuff has so-called responsiveness. In other words, that an honest leader will always have the consensus reached in time bounded by the network delays, not timeouts. In Tendermint, this is not the case. It is not the case because in the pre-commit phase, if a participant observes pre-commits on nil from 2/3 of the participants, okay, so you're not getting it, they cannot move to the next view until the timeout expires. But in Hot Stuff, because it's pipelined, I think. Are those together? Is that like if Tendermint was pipelined, it would also be responsive? Okay, let me see. No, I don't think so. They cannot move to the next view until the timeout expires. Otherwise, an adversary with careful control of the network can make the algorithm switch between views indefinitely. The responsiveness, while a neat feature, is somewhat misleading. Okay. Specifically, it only guarantees that the time it will take for the consensus to be reached will be bound by network delays if the leader is online and honest. If the leader is offline, the system will still wait for the full timeout to move to the next view. In practice, in Cosmos, which has been running a large instance of Tendermint for a long time presently, all the view changes that ever occurred were due to the offline leader, okay, and never due to the pre-commit on null. Thus, the responsiveness of Hot Stuff would have never mattered in Cosmos up to date. Okay. I'm also not diving deep here into the fact that Hot Stuff requires an extra round of communication to receiver. Oh! In the first view, such an extra round can be omitted, and in the second view, is compensated with pipelining. Thus, the extra round really becomes an issue. But if Tendermint was pipelined, then you gain the pipelining without having the extra round. That I guess I don't know if it's Polkadot that has Hot Stuff. um, Doomslug versus Tendermint and hot stuff. Now we're talking about the difference between them. So the optimistic case. Now let's compare how Doomslug with a Finality Gadget compares to Tendermint and hot stuff under various conditions. First, let's consider the case in which no view changes occur and all messages reach leaders in time. So the optimistic case. Woohoo! In the figure above, gray blocks are proposed blocks. Blue, so these are proposed. Oh, I can't really highlight them. Sorry. I need to like get these papers in a way where I can highlight properly when I'm reading them, so that people that when I read them later, I can know what I'm talking about. But I know what I'm talking about now. Blue blocks are the blocks that have BFT finality, and yellow blocks are the blocks that have Doomslug finality. Makes sense. You get you have proposed blocks, and then you get Doomslug finality, then you get BFT finality. Under normal circumstances, hot stuff and Tendermint behave exactly the same. After a block is proposed, within 2 rounds of communication, the block is final, and after 2 more rounds, the block that immediately follows it is also final. Note that hot stuff doesn't pipeline across blocks, only across views. Okay, I get it. And thus, producing 2 blocks still requires 4 rounds, not 3. Okay, that makes, I was like, what? Now I get it. Doomslug doesn't improve on latency to full BFT finality, and thus, since the moment the first block is produced, it still takes 2 rounds of communication until it has the full BFT finality. But you get 1 round Doomslug finality, right? As discussed above, however, after the first round of communication, the block already has a weaker than BFT sense of finality that we refer to as Doomslug finality, which is kind of weird because it's like, if nobody got slashed, you're final, but like, if someone got slashed, you're not final, but then how do you, like, how long does it take? Like, slashing has to be tough then. And I think that's why currently the Valor's got to hold so much, because slashing has to be a super, like, terrible thing to happen to you if the only way, 1 second block times, or like, yeah. But I mean, that's every chain, I guess. Also note that by nature of Finality Gadgets, their throughput is the same as the underlying block production. And thus, after 3 rounds of communication, there are already 2 blocks that have full BFT finality. And after 4 rounds, there are 3 such blocks. Oh, because you're always only 1 block behind. In other words, while it takes the same time for Doomslug with the Finality Gadget to reach full BFT finality on a single block, it finalizes twice as many blocks as Tendermint or hot stuff per long period of time. While it doesn't improve on latency, it improves on the throughput by a factor of 2, because every message can give you, like, every round gives you some sort of finality. Very interesting. Less optimistic. So that's when everyone's like being happy-go-lucky. Okay. I'm not gonna try and. Oh, it's like so close to being together. I think I can. There we go. I now have it all together. Now let's see what happens in a less optimistic case, in which either some participants are offline or a view fails for another reason. In the figure above, we show the case in which 2 consecutive views have failed. Okay. In the case of Tendermint, each failed view adds 2 rounds of communication, and thus it will take 6 rounds of communication to finalize the block. So each failed view, so if you fail like 4, 5, 6 times, you're always adding 2 rounds of communication. Yeah. In the case of hot stuff, the pipelining kicks in. and the block will be finalized after just 4 rounds of communication. Due to the Finality Gadgets having the same throughput as the underlying block production, Doomslug with the Finality Gadget enjoys the same pipelining and will also finalize the block after 4 rounds of communication. It is the case, however, that after the first 3 rounds, the block will already have Doomslug. Oh yes, because you get the weak finality or whatever they call it. After 3 rounds, you get Doomslug finality, and then so that once the next round hits, you have it. Doomslug and is on the one that slashed, and then after the 4th round, together with the first block reaching BFT finality, a block built on top of it will already. Wait. It is the case, however, that after. That's interesting. You get quicker Doomslug finality, and after the 4th round, together with the first block reaching BFT finality, cool, right? A block built on top of it will already have Doomslug finality as well. That's cool. Oh yes, on the next round, I suppose. Anyways, other considerations. Above, we compared one dimension in which block production and consensus algorithms can be compared. The number of rounds to finality under different conditions. There are other considerations. For example, while all the consensus algorithms discussed in this post have liveliness, in other words, are guaranteed to not stall under certain practical conditions. I mean, you see practical. Their exact behavior in presence of network delays and interruption differs. I think this is where consensus papers really get into differences. Yes, you might have generic things, but what do you specifically do when a delay happens? Because delays are going to happen eventually, right? The amount of time it takes to recover after a period of long loss of connectivity can vary noticeably. Our simulated tests show that Doomslug recovers quickly after long periods of network inactivity. The simulation code can be found here. That code didn't work, I don't think. I tried it earlier. But generally, very little research was done on comparing the consensus protocols from this perspective. Interesting. Might be a cool research place to go into. The amount of time it takes to recover after long loss of connectivity. So you just simulate with a bunch of nodes and speed up time. Very interesting. Another dimension is implementation complexity, with an assumption that 1/3 of all the block producers weighted by stake can never become corrupted. With an assumption that 1/3 of that's reasonable. A protocol built on Tendermint or hot stuff doesn't need to implement any logic to handle forks. Interesting. Doomslug finalizes blocks slower than it produces them. And therefore, forks are possible until the blocks are actually final. Correspondingly, the protocol needs to be able to handle such forks, which noticeably increases the complexity of the implementation. In the case of Near, we switched to Doomslug from a flavor of longest chain protocol, and thus already had all the logic of handling forks and an intensive test coverage for it implemented, But for a new effort to build a protocol not having to deal with forks can result in a considerable reduction of implementation costs. Very interesting. I love this. I love it. And then you have all of this information. So, how long has this video been? 35 minutes. I'm already tired. Gosh darn it. I have some really cool papers to read through. Impossibility of distributed consensus with one faulty process. I want to read through this. I'm not gonna right now. I'll go through this tomorrow afternoon probably. I'll start getting the actual paper. I'll do this on my own time. And then I haven't even gone through the paper yet. But yeah, I'm gonna end this video here. My dog's like begging me to go out, and I'm gonna go hang out with her for a bit. But that is the introduction to Doomslug. Tomorrow's video, or whenever I do the next video, I'll actually get into the paper, and we'll go from there. I don't know how long the paper is. I don't think it's that long. Like, you know, oh, it's not even 20 pages. So it's just taking me probably one sitting, an hour and a half or so. So tomorrow afternoon, I'll hopefully have time. Yeah, that's all from me.